The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
Wow,
that was a fire pour. Fuego. That was a fuego pour.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It was on a beautiful Sonoma morning once again, man. How lucky are we are
in between rainstorms, basically.
I know.
It's our happy place.
How you doing, John Couturi?
I'm just fine. I am indeed welcoming you to the Winemakers.
Sam Hansen.
I'm John Myers with Brian Casey.
Myers.
I got that one right today. Sam Couturi and our special guest
Jack
today,
Edwards, not that Jack Edwards.
Jack Sporer from, let's see, your proprietor, partner, owner, and everything from sweeper and barrel washer to the top of the heap, Fresh Wines LLC in Sonoma, Custom Crush, and also that would be your wine label, Freshco.
Freshco is the brand.
Yeah, so
And
welcome.
Magnolia is the place.
Magnolia is the place. Thank you very much.
Right.
That's perfect. It's a long title, though.
Well,
it really
I know.
is. You managed to get it on your card.
Jack Be Nimble,
Jack the Quick.
maker of Freshco, runner of Magnolia,
Hey, man, thanks for coming. Much
to be here,
appreciated.
guys.
genetic
Really
line of the Buckland family.
Yeah, for
Are
better or
you?
for worse.
For better or for worse.
Really?
These are
Yeah,
my
Will-
favorite
Will's
shows.
my-
This is Will Buckland's nephew.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Will, wow, what a fountain of knowledge that guy is.
Yeah, that was the 3-hour show that could have been a 6-hour show.
Seriously, that was.
He's one of the, he doesn't say much until he does, and then he doesn't stop. Thank God.
That's a very positive thing, Sam. What can you say?
Is that a fair assessment of
If you get
Uncle
him
Will?
going, then he's going.
He's going. And if not, it's all one syllable, often guttural responses.
Brian, this looks like a lineup that you're going to be very.
These are my
happy
favorite shows, not just because the lineup is primarily white and it's got some funky color going on and some cool stuff, but because I love the shows where we have people on that are they're badasses in the industry, but they don't have these brands that everyone knows that are in Safeway or even necessarily know. Like it's almost like it's like insider wine. It's people who are in the wine industry know this wine, and we love to drink it. But I like that we get to introduce it to a wider audience because I absolutely love these wines.
Thank you.
All right, Jack. Well, thanks for coming. It's been good you could be here.
So the wine we got in our glass right now is the
Keep us on track. Thank you.
Right in there.
See, that's
2022 Fire Fuego.
this is the fresh. This is the
Yeah.
This is the fresh fuego.
Exactly.
Frigo Fresco.
It's arguably too fresh. So I
Tell
think,
us about this.
Yeah, so this comes from a vineyard just down the road from where we're recording on Denmark Street. The vineyard is farmed by one of y'all's employees,
Right.
Eric Klaus, and his wife Holly. They are 6th generation on the land, but they wanted to convert the vineyard block to organic. So with me being able to commit to buying the fruit and them having the knowledge that they do all the pruning, all the tractor work, do some no-till, very light spraying, and then obviously no Roundup or any of the other stuff that we don't like. So I take that ethos into the winery, make the wine. In this case, 0-0 wine. That means no sulfur or other additions or removals.
So first of all, for those of you listening at home who came to one of our 2 Vinyl Sunday parties last year at the barn on Denmark Street, that's the vineyard that Jack is talking about. But let's zoom out a second. Just tell us about Freshco, Fresh Wine Company, how you came to that. I mean, you obviously you grew up Buckland, for better or for worse, as we've discussed. But, so spending time at Old Hill, how did you? But was wine? Were you like as a kid going, I'm gonna make wine and run?
God, no.
Right.
So I think Will started the label in 2000, 2001. So the years after that, I was bottling as a 12 and 13-year-old.
Right. This industry runs on child labor.
And
for those of you keeping score at home.
I hated it. Bottling, I still don't really like it very much. But
and Bart's about to do it.
Right, Bart's doing it right
Yeah.
now.
And he's on special assignment today, by the way.
Well, it's got to be done, and it's got to be done right. And I, had this experience where I don't like it. Didn't ever think about doing wine as a kid, as a teenager. Went away to college, studied biology. Graduated, worked in the field, and I didn't think academia was going to be for me. It was not.
Did you go to
in the
UC
field
Davis?
of biology, not in the field of vineyard?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Counting seedlings and trapping rodents and giving them ear tags. I like living out there, but it was not.
Wait, where were you doing this?
Oh, the Blackfoot Valley of Montana.
Oh.
That was just a summer job out of school.
Where was your schooling? David?
Providence College.
Oh,
in Rhode Island.
Go Friars.
Go Friars.
I could go for something fried with this one.
Yeah, totally.
This idea.
A good old fashioned like New England clam bake or something.
how the hell did you get out there from here? And
I
back?
wanted to get as far away as possible.
He's a Buckland. He wanted to leave. He was smart. He's a Buckland without the last name, so he's like, get out of here.
Exactly. I wanted to see something different. And, I mentioned earlier I wasn't a great student, so I didn't get into all the schools I applied to. But I did get into Providence College, and that was a good school. For some reason, they took a flyer on me, and I had a great time out there. But, I like the mild winters and the chill California Bay Area attitudes. So that was, it was a great experiment and made me really appreciate home. So by the time I got home, I fell into a harvest gig at the winery that is now Magnolia. So 2012 was my first harvest, working with my Uncle Will. Bedrock was actually crushing there. It was a really good vintage.
2012, Bedrock, it was Inkadu.
Yeah.
Will was made, Buckland has always been made there, basically. Yeah. But that was before Bedrock's new facility, so they were part of that as well, or sort of
exactly. They were custom crushing, and they had the lease on the space next door, so we actually had a ton of macrobins. We wheeled them across the parking lot, and I was doing punch downs there before there were any tanks.
Right.
I didn't know anything about anything, but
How
I did like the
punch
work.
downs without a tank.
They macrobins.
Okay.
Yeah.
You do it with a big paddle and a lot of sweat and elbow grease.
Yep. Being a tall man, I can do punch downs without
leverage,
without any ladders or anything. So it's my main innate talent,
right?
Is being tall, and put it to good use there. And I finished that harvest, and I liked the work, but mainly I wanted to travel. And people were saying you could go to Australia and do harvest there. And they'll pay you. And so I got my work and holiday visa, went down there, down under, did a harvest, followed that up with a harvest in Bordeaux.
Wow. Where?
Yeah. Chateau Pavie-Macon.
Nice.
I was very fortunate to get that job. I showed up.
What area of
It's
Bordeaux is it?
Saint-Emilion.
Okay.
Yeah. And I showed up to Chateau Pavie. Turns out it's not the same winery.
Okay. That's an important distinction because I was impressed.
Jack who?
Yeah. They probably sent me on my way to the Pavie-Macon. And actually, the guy who hired me was managing labor at several different chateaus. So I got to work at a few, but Macon's the most notable. And it was the most, where I learned the most. So
That's a very cool area, isn't it?
Oh, my God. I mean, the wines are excellent.
And every little spot has vines on it.
Yeah.
Everybody's front yard, every backyard. It's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't know I liked Merlot.
Right.
Right.
You better like Merlot.
I know.
Saint-Emilion.
Well, I got some in barrel this year, so let's hope I still like it when I'm bottling it.
Wait, where's it from? Just curious.
Bedrock Vineyard.
Which? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm stoked on there in organic.
Ding.
Nice.
They're awesome. Love working with them.
Yeah, I'm totally grooving on Once and Future Merlot.
Oh, hell yeah.
Morgenstad.
Is that from the same? He's getting that from the Bedrock Vineyard?
It's in Carneros. It's listed as Carneros on the bottle. I don't know exactly where the vineyard is, but
Joel is an amazing
Yeah, he's a hero
winemaker. Yeah.
of mine.
Just likes to make wine because he doesn't have to.
When we were out here as tourists, we were buying wine at like Rite Aid when we'd stop in. And what's there? Ravenswood.
Yep.
Bingo. Okay, grab a few of those.
Yeah.
Glad that you don't buy wine at Rite Aid anymore, John. Moving on.
Only for one show that we did.
Only one show we bought wine at Rite Aid.
Yeah.
You get ice cream too, so
Yeah,
there's that.
exactly.
They pretty much have everything, actually.
Some of everything.
Yeah, you need a razor and then pick up your meds and
And they got a pretty decent selection
pack of
of wine
balloons
these
for your
days,
daughter's
actually.
birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I'll have to.
they're
Yeah.
better than
We should email
some
the
on
wine buyer.
market.
Yeah, seriously. Get some Fire Fuego up in Rite Aid.
I know you can get Apothic Red there.
Oh, thank God.
Shout out to Brene.
Okay, so you're in Bordeaux. You learn how to the Bordeaux ways.
Yeah, it was 2013 was like a historically bad and wet vintage, so it was but the good
This was
good-
2015.
2013,
2013.
Yeah, the good houses made good wine, but a lot of the sort of bigger houses had a hard time. It was cold, wet. They had snails coming in. It was tough. But
Eat the snails.
what about that?
Eat the snails.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a good idea. The French have had that idea before.
And you're speaking French at this point?
Je parle-vous un petit peu.
Okay.
That's about all I know, and that was kind of an issue. But I got through it.
A lot of pointing and grunting.
Yeah, un, deux, trois, that kind of stuff.
You can get along knowing wine. Where's the water closet?
Yeah, exactly. How to order a beer.
Yeah.
Most importantly. I came back, and when I came back, I'd done 3 harvests back to back to back. So I was, my wrists were falling off, and my body was needed a break. So I took a job at a wine shop, a San Francisco wine trading company in San Francisco, an OG, old school San
Totally
Francisco.
classic.
Yeah, in the Sunset where I grew up, and that was where I fell in love with wine. Tasted, 5 to 10 wines a day, a bunch of different reps, stocking, selling wine. It was great, and I learned a lot. Those guys taught me a whole bunch, and they were selling natural wine, which I didn't know about for like 5 more years. Not exclusively or even majority of the wine, but there's wines that I recognize as hallmarks of benchmarks of natural wine producers now that they had on the shelf.
European or California?
Right.
Well, European mostly.
Yeah.
Paulo Bea, Oki Pinti was there.
Keep them rolling.
Shout out James Joyner. You're gonna go buy a
Yeah,
bottle
I
of
know.
Palo Bay just because you heard it on the show.
Smart man.
Hopefully everybody does that, Sam.
Well, not everybody should probably go out and buy Palo Bay all at once.
No, but I mean,
certainly
anybody we have
for
on.
our prices because we want to buy more. And it's you got to know what you're getting into when you buy a bottle of Palo Bay for what you're paying and
Yeah.
what
Yeah. It's serious. It's big dough.
Yeah.
Big money for that.
The Oki Pinti. How do you say it? I never say it right.
Oki Pinti.
Oki Pinti. Those wines are more approachable price wise and are like Brian Darling's.
Are they at Rite Aid?
They're probably not a Rite Aid, but you'd know the label if you saw it. It's on like every cool guy's Instagram.
Okie
And there's Sicilian, those like really like minerally high acid whites that are just like super delicious and quenching.
Mm-hmm. My first wine crush.
Yeah. Well, also a beautiful winemaker. Right.
So,
You're talking about the wine or the winemaker?
the winemaker, but you'll learn. You live and learn.
Yeah. He didn't speak Italian.
Yeah,
so
I
you didn't
know.
understand.
That was the main thing I didn't learn. I moved after a year at the wine shop. Retail during Christmas just killed me, and so I wanted to get back into production, and so flew to New Zealand. Did a bike tour there. Biked from Christchurch up through Blenheim to Wellington, and on the way I got a job for harvest in Marlborough. Worked at Alan Scott, experienced what we call the Savalanche, Sauvignon Blanc Avalanche.
I've never heard that term before.
Yeah, I was everywhere then, and that was cool. That's big winemaking, and even the winery I was at was relatively small for the area, but they do it on a scale that I have never done before or since.
You're talking about big like semi trucks coming in.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah.
Machine harvested. Yeah, big hoppers full of grapes.
Yeah.
But it's fun, you know. I mean, New Zealand's an awesome country. Would recommend it to anyone. Went from New Zealand, got a job at Chapelet in Napa, and worked there for 2 years. That was like winery boot camp. You know, they are very regimented and very good at what they do, and they teach you well. So anyone who's looking to figure out how to be a winemaker, I would start there. They're awesome.
They sure have a good reputation.
Yeah,
They do.
Wines
One
are
of the
great.
legacies for sure.
Yeah. So learned a lot from Phil and Rye and the Chapelets there. I got to meet Don Chapelet before he passed, which was that's one of those legends you get to interact with in this industry. It's really cool.
Speaking of which, this is coming out a week later, but not to down or interrupt you on this, sorry, Jack, but Angelo San Giacomo just passed away.
I saw that this morning.
92 years old. There's a great video series on the Sonoma Valley Vintners website.
The legends.
The icons or legends, and it's basically a conversation between Angelo San Giacomo and Jim Bunchu, and they're talking about. I mean, if you want to like know how Sonoma went from being just fruits and nuts, and I mean that literally, not figuratively.
Yeah, pear trees,
and prunes and walnuts and such, to grapes. Angelo San Giacomo was right in the middle of that. The San Giacomo lands were converted, in the 70s.
And you can hear Steve if you go back through our library
and he's been on the
San
podcast.
Giacomo,
But shout out, that's like the reason that Sonoma is Sonoma. Angelo was right in the middle of it. So
Cool.
love and prayers and thoughts to the San Giacomo family right now.
Yeah. Well, when I was at Chapelet, they were buying San Giacomo fruit, and I got to go to one of the vintage tastings, taste all the Chardonnays that everyone had made, and got to meet the San Giacomos. They were super sweet.
Yeah, cool.
I had on the wrong name tag, and they were like, I remember one of the sons, I think Steve maybe, was just super kind to me and like helped me out. And I was like, such a green baby in the industry, didn't know anything, and they were just.
Whose name tag were you wearing?
Phil Titus's.
Did he know?
He could tell that I wasn't the right guy. Yeah.
Well, was it when we did a tasting at Paradigm? Ren Harris was mentioning. Was it we were talking about
next
this,
week's podcast guest? Ren Harris.
Yeah, that weren't they doing Chenin Blanc at Chapelet?
Oh yeah, long time they have been. That's their house white.
Yeah,
Molly loves it.
I think Bart does. Shannon doesn't.
Yeah.
I've heard. We've heard. He's filtering Chenin Blanc as we speak, actually.
yeah.
I know. It's
I don't know
unfiltered.
why. Why filter Chenin Blanc?
He's actually, I don't know if he's filtering the Chenin Blanc.
I don't know.
He talked about 2 rosés, Sonoma Valley, Zinfandel. He wanted me to shout them all out, and he didn't text me, so I'm not remembering. Maybe a Petit Syrah rosé and a Grenache rosé.
Cool.
I don't know. That's why Bart's not here.
Dane
God, that
Sellers.
guy's
Dane Sellers.
expanding.
Dane Sellers.
He's up
Sunday,
to like 20,000 cases or something.
All hand bottled.
Totally.
So 2 harvests at Chapelet. Then I got the itch to move again, and so flew down to Chile. And worked, woofed at a vineyard there, and then through that got a job. Woofed. Woof.
For those,
Yeah.
if you'd willing workers on organic farms is
That's
woofing.
correct. Yeah.
And it's basically like you travel to an organic farm, they put you up, and you work, maybe paid, maybe not, feed you room and board kind of situation.
Yeah, there was no pay here, but I was
Usually it's not.
Yeah, it was, but I mean, for the experience of being able to work in a vineyard in Chile in the Alta Colchagua, it was cool.
And it was organic.
Yes,
I mean, it has to. If you're a woofing, it's organic.
Yeah,
farms,
exactly. Right.
How do they different organic practices than from us?
I think each country has its own certifying body, or in some cases, there's multiple certifying bodies. In general, the principles are the same. I think you can't have any synthetic pesticides is the main thing, and then they also things like you can't have treated wood on the as the vineyard end post, and I'm not super familiar, but I think it's the same idea, but maybe like the nitty gritty, it could be different depending on who's actually doing the certifying.
And you were woofing during harvest down there, or you
So
like?
I went down in January, which is their height of their summer.
Right.
And I didn't have a job in mind, a place to work in mind yet, so I wanted to sort of feel it out. So I went down there, but landed with a place to go, which is that vineyard, and did that for a couple weeks. And then the guy that was making the wine, who was consulting on the vineyard project, was actually UC Davis grad who knew my uncle, this guy named Ed Flaherty, who had his own project. So I worked for him for harvest.
Like an actual like a salary job.
Yeah, exactly right. That was my first sort of enologist gig. And that was an excellent, experience. I have to say Chilean Spanish is definitely sort of the most diverged from sort of like what they might teach you at school. So it was like right into the fire for me, especially in the field, up in the mountains. People are dropping S's and like the accent is tough, and the slang is plentiful. So I learned a lot. I had to pick it up quick,
right.
But now I can still speak Spanish, which was kind of one of the other points about going there versus other countries.
Right. Cool.
From Chile, I came back and worked at Bedrock.
That's when you worked at Bedrock.
Yeah,
okay.
so 17, worked at Bedrock, and many of y'all know. Yeah.
With our esteemed friend of the podcast, Isabel Gassier.
Isabel Gassier, wow. Yeah, that was a good time. And then that was also the year of the fires,
Right.
Which were so awful. So I got out of that harvest, and I just needed to clear my headspace a little bit and sort of take a break and reorient. And so I went to the Santa Rosa Junior College, and ended up getting my associates in viticulture there over the next year and a half, 2 years, which I would recommend to anyone. The bang for your buck there is super high. Classes are cheap.
The Oxford of community colleges.
Exactly, it is, and they have this whole farm campus called Schoen Farm out in West County, working vineyard, working market garden. Took some animal husbandry classes as well. It was a great time. Met a lot of my really close friends there, including my fiance.
Shout out
Saskia Tingy.
Yeah, there you go. I can't say her last name. I barely say her first name.
I think I got it right, but I usually
usually get it wrong.
So.
Hopefully she won't listen.
I think she might.
I've heard that from multiple people about, if there's most people are like at Fresno or Davis, but if you live around here locally and just want to get a feel for, see if it's right for you, that the Santa Rosa Junior College is supposed to be great for.
And also Napa doesn't do a bad job either. The Napa Valley College viticulture and enology program is, and the thing about it is, and I'm sure that you saw this, the people who are your instructors are people in the industry or people who've been in the industry. Mm-hmm. So if you want, you go there, and if you don't have a connection, you're going to get a connection to somebody,
exactly.
somewhere to work.
Exactly.
Which is kind of the point of going to college, I think, anyway.
Right.
It's only to build connections so that you can
build connections
pay your mortgage
to beer bongs
moving forward. Will you hang on for a second and just tell us about this wine?
Because I'm not gonna lie. Out of the bottle, right? I was like, all right, this is a little natty and skin contact. And then the next thing I knew, I looked down and my glass was empty.
Yeah.
So it's fire fuego.
It is fire.
Yeah.
That's the idea. Like I said, Sauvignon Blanc, just from very close to the winery. The way I make this orange wine is I put the clusters into the tank. So like a whole cluster ferment, but then I also take a separate portion and I press that, and I take the juice and pump it over the top. So basically you're filling up the holes in between the clusters.
How much skin contact?
I think this is about 6 days. And so
wait, so let me. So you take the whole clusters gently, so you're not putting them into a tank.
Yeah.
You're pressing off the juice, and until you sort of displace all the air in the tank with juice.
Right, yeah. So there's a tank full of whole clusters,
right.
And then another portion of that same wine is direct pressed, and the juice is pumped over the whole clusters. Okay. Basically, the reason I sort of came up with the idea, first of all, the Cabronic White, that's Isabel Gassier's idea.
Shout out. She
Issa.
definitely won't be listening.
Second of all, there's this problem with natural wine, that is kind of a solved problem for most other wines that use sulfur. Is this mouse taint? Is this sort of this flavor you get?
Mousiness.
Yeah, and it, in my experience and from what I've read, comes from exposure to oxygen. And so what I was really trying to do is make a stable 0-0 wine. I didn't want to use sulfur on this cuvee if I could avoid it. And so I was reasoning that maybe if you just do not, if you fill up the cracks, then there's less air contact. And so that, and also trying to get the right amount of extraction, like a really light extraction. I find
this isn't one of those like super tannic orange wines that like dries your mouth out. And, Yeah.
And the color is, similar to a white. I mean, it's a little darker, but not much. And so, that's the protocol. I did it 1 year
because it just like typically the color in an orange wine isn't necessarily from the skin contact; it's the oxidation, right?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to make a tough a wine that could withstand being open. So serve it by the glass. It'll still taste good tomorrow. Was the idea.
And it travels. I mean, I've seen it on the shelves of cool wine shops in New York and Brooklyn and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, we're in New York now and also LA.
But how did you have skin contact whites and then decide that was something you wanted to do, or you just?
Yeah, I mean, somewhere in the history of my wine travels, relatively late is when I discovered natural wine. I think I'd always leaned organic. I'd always leaned lower intervention, native yeast. But I didn't really even know the term natural wine until like 2018, I think.
So is that the first year? 2018 was the first year of Fresh Wine Co.
19.
Yeah.
So 19, I was production manager at Enkidu, which became Magnolia shortly thereafter, and I guess because I had wanted to start a natural wine brand, but I didn't know much about it. My uncle recommended going up to your uncle's spot. So I helped with Nick Coturri and Dan Marioni. David Rothschild just helped bottle a bit, and then sort of was exposed to the movement there quite a bit. And orange wine was a category that was kind of new to me and really exciting because I think it's equal. It should be there. There should be red, rosé, white, orange. I think there should be more orange wine out there, whether you're making it naturally or not. I think it's a really wonderful way to express a variety.
Right.
Well,
and
there's the flavor, even on a white grape, the flavor's in the skin. Still, I mean, you go out into walk that vineyard on Denmark Street with Eric and Holly, and you bite the berry and you get the sweetness and the juice, but when you really like dig in and kind of like macerate the skin on your teeth, that's where like all the really interesting flavors are. So then from that standpoint, like having some skin contact in your white, even if it's white wine, or destined to be white wine, that's where the flavor is, right?
And is for doing a skin contact white, do you think it's better to use varietals that have like inherently higher acidity in them?
Yeah, it depends how you want to do it. I do think acidity is super crucial for natural winemaking, and stems are kind of antithetical to that because they'll raise the pH. So some people do. I mean, what I experienced and what I kind of wanted to do differently is a lot of the nouveau wave of California winemakers do sort of destemmed white fruit. So you get like more extraction, which I just find there's like 2 weeks of that. It doesn't do it for me. I don't know. It's not the wines can be a little bit more a little unbalanced, in my opinion. And so there's like
like astringent.
Exactly right. And I think for varieties like Sauvignon Blanc, which is kind of linear anyway, I think the carbonic really helps too, to sort of bring out the fruit notes. And
while we're on the topic of giving credit to Isabel Gassier for things, talk about the name a little bit, Fire Fuego.
Well, that was there's a box holding it with a fire hose at my family farm, and it just is sort of in the same color scheme as my labels. It's red on white, and it says Fire Fuego. It's just got the fire hose in it.
Right.
So I was just looking at that one day, and I was like, you know what? That's kind of a cool name. So
I thought it was Isabel's idea.
No,
she just
no.
claims that.
She claims that the wine style is her.
Oh, so
yeah.
All right. Sorry, Isabel, you don't get credit on that.
Yeah, no.
I know exactly the box you're talking
Am I
about.
the only
exactly.
one? I smell like almost like jalapeno.
Yeah, it does have the
On
green
the
chili
nose.
thing. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pyrazines right there, you know.
Totally.
It's Sauvignon Blanc, right?
Sauvignon
It's
Blanc.
That's the fuego part.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think it's delicious, Jack.
Good.
Totally.
Man.
Yeah.
I'm happy with this one too.
And this is 22. This
yeah,
is the 22.
exactly
Okay.
right. So real fresh. A bottle.
Yeah.
So bottle that young. I mean, you know, the other thing about natural winemaking is just trying to manage risk, right? So the longer you're in barrel, the more oxidation you're going to get, the more issues you have with, you know, spoilage organisms. So especially with the 0-0 wines, try and bottle them really quick. And that to me is usually late January. So I'll ferment dry in tank, barrel it down to neutral French oak, and then do a little bit of lees stirring till I feel like it's got the mid palate that I want, and then bottle it real quick as soon as I can.
When you want these wines to kind of have what a lot of people, I guess, use this term tension.
Mhm.
Like you want them to be kind of fresh and lively, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Tension is key.
Yeah. Nuts.
So one of the questions that Bart had for me was the difference between, I guess you call it the Fumé Blanc and the Fire Fuego, because they're coming from the same vineyard, right?
Right.
So what? And now, my assumption is that the Fumé Blanc is the juice that you don't pump over onto the carbonic
Yep.
part. You're just fermenting that more in a more conventional.
That's correct. So, in this case, I picked it later.
you did? Okay.
Yeah, a separate pick. Another difference would be that there's a few rows at the end of the block that are Sauvignon Muscat clone, and then one row that is Viognier.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Another white. Sorry.
We were just
okay.
talking
I
about
know.
that before the show. Yeah.
I'll get it one of these days, guys.
Yeah, it's all good. This is
well-
better than when we had you on via Zoom anyway.
Oh, good.
With that terrible internet
Oh, my
connection that you
God.
have at Magnolia Wine
Oh, my
Services.
God, yeah. That was
This is a
fun.
very local label, man. Sonoma Valley Skin Contact 00.
Yeah.
Denmark Street Vineyards.
So
Sonoma
the
County.
And shout out to Eric and Holly on the back label too. That's cool.
Yeah.
yeah, I did that all my labels because they're really doing most of the hard work
Yep.
and the heavy lifting. So maybe we'll try
Regeneratively
the
fun, too.
Let's go
Fumé.
Fumé Blanc.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, so
Sorry to fuck up your
that's
order.
okay. Don't worry about it. I was gonna change it anyway. The Fumé Blanc also is barrel fermented. So if you guys probably know the term Fumé Blanc. A lot of natural wine buyers
Mondavi.
might not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the back it says dry Sauvignon Blanc, because when Mondavi sort of started the term, his goal was to delineate between a lot of the sweet Sauvignon Blancs that were common in the 80s and the dry and sort of more barrel influenced one that he wanted to make. So I actually buy a new barrel for this wine. Shout out the Boswell Company and Eric Miard, who hand makes these barrels, and I'm a big fan of that Cooper.
So French. Those
yeah.
are French names, right?
Exactly. New French oak is kind of not super common in natural wine, and the price point is
Or
really
even
important.
in Sauvignon Blanc,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Some of the great Sauvignon Blancs of the world, though, are using.
Well, like Bordeaux, but like here, I don't.
And Didier, the Dagenot
stuff.
style is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is like extended barrel age with some new barrels. So definitely, there's classical precedent for that, but not in the as you keep reading about Sauvignon Blanc is like right now is like the hottest thing varietal wise in California. People just like can't keep enough Sauvignon Blanc, and definitely most of those are never seen any wood. Probably they're just stainless to bottle to market, right?
So I wanted to do barrel wine, so I bought a new barrel. I also got some barrels from Mike Thomas Winery, which, if you know about their barrel program, they hold on to barrels for about 20 years before they kick them out. So I literally have a 1999 and an 01 from them that I think do really interesting things to the wine for the élevage.
And they used them for white wine? Or
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, neutral white barrels.
Yeah. Okay.
But like uber neutral, beyond neutral.
Right. Just a vessel that has a little bit of breath to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very porous.
Yeah.
This is fantastic, Jack.
Yeah, I'm stoked on the way this one's evolving.
I think this is the one I tried at the cheese party.
Yeah, that would have been it.
It was
Yeah.
fucking great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's with all those cheeses, because of that, like
Yeah.
the complexity, the like, there's some structure, and then just like racing finish.
Brian, you just said one of the words you're not supposed to say on radio. I was doing a show yesterday, little old lady talking about Ukraine.
And this is like on KSVY.
Yeah.
She dropped an F-bomb on
She
KSVY.
sure as
That's
hell did, man.
Fucking rad.
Hell yeah. I'm into that.
She
We're on a
was like,
podcast. We can say whatever we want, but KSVY is our beloved local public access radio
community radio, man.
So, okay, so I'm noticing the alcohol a little bit higher. You said you left this out there a little bit longer. and
Yeah.
that's- okay.
Yeah, and it's and we run the cellar a little dry, so it evaporates out. These sort of alcohol can raise even after
Right.
even after things are done fermenting. So yeah, it crept up to 14.6, and I think what most people would have done in this situation would have just lied. Would have been to just put a
What?
lower
Nobody
alcohol.
does that in the wine industry. What are you talking
You
about,
get a
Jack?
grace of 0.5%, and then people kind of take liberties.
Yeah, 0.5%
But
plus
I'm-
0.5%.
I don't know. I'm pretty
Plus or minus.
I try to be pretty open about what is and isn't in the wine, and
Yeah.
and that's important to me. So putting 14.6 is, might impact sales, but it's a,
They just need to try it.
it's honest.
Well, and
right.
I mean, I don't know all the methods that you used in this, but if one of the lessons of natural wine that I get from Uncle Tony, everybody in natural wine is very focused on acidity as the sort of preservative in place of excessive sulfur and other products, but alcohol can have the same capabilities, right?
Definitely.
Alcohol is gonna kill, what did you call it? You had a great word for like the bad microbes,
Spoilage.
I love this one.
spoilage microbes.
Yeah, inhibits them for sure.
For sure. At Couturier Winery, there was not a lot of like low alcohol winemaking, maybe more now, but
Yeah,
combine those two, because this is obviously not lacking in acidity.
right.
Combine that with a little bit of ABV, wine that can last a long freaking time.
I think this one's gonna go another 10 years. Yeah,
Totally.
I think from age-worthy white, this is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
And it's nice and a little bit oxidative and a little bit nutty.
hmm
Um,
Yeah, I love it when it gets that like when Sauvignon Blanc gets old and starts to like taste like aged cheese. You get like that
Yeah.
Parmesan thing, that nutty thing.
yeah, exactly.
That like Marcona almond action. I love that. That's like
This would never last 10 years at my house.
you're gonna have to hide this from Brian so we can taste it in
This-
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years from now, let me see what it tastes like, but it's fucking delicious, Jack.
Thanks, bud. So good. And so just, backing up a little bit to the brand, everything is from Sonoma Valley.
Yep.
And everything is grown regeneratively, which to me means organic is the minimum. So you're not just checking a list about what pesticides you did and didn't use, but you're actually farming for soil health. A lot of these growers go to no-till, do dry farming, and in some cases, don't do any vineyard sprays at all. So it's I'm trying to push the envelope and work with the growers too, so that they can afford to make these changes. Eric's Vineyard, the Sauvignon Blanc, is probably the best test case for that, because they were leasing that out to another vineyard management company that does not prioritize soil health,
Right.
and
And they were probably selling the fruit pretty low
Yeah, exactly.
low cost.
exactly right. So I want these vines to be here 30 years from now. They're already 30 years old, or 100 years from now, whatever.
Right.
And you don't really get that when you spray a bunch of herbicides. So that's what gets me out of bed in the morning is sort of trying to have a business that fuels organic transition.
Well, and the value of that for a multi-generational property like the Nellis Ranch, the Klaus Ranch, whatever we want to call it, Denmark Street Vineyards, if they can't get a price out of those vineyards to sustain the family living on the property and keeping the property, the inevitable thing happens is that they sell it off in chunks and it becomes, freaking McMansions with little hobby vineyards in front of it, and that's worse than anything. But the only way that they're going to get those prices and sustain that is to farm this way, so you can sell the fruit this way, so you can sell the wine this way, right? It's just like,
well, that's the idea.
It's got to be.
Exactly.
McMansions.
Now, if I see another like these houses that are like white with black trim and sort of like quasi modern, and they rip out an old vineyard and then they build the house and then they plant a quarter acre of bullshit vineyard and that's their like gentleman farmer action. I just it looks cool, sorta, but it's not actually like maintaining our agricultural heritage. It's actually taken away from it.
Nobody
right?
else can afford it either, right?
And why doesn't Holly get credit on the back of this one?
You know what? They hadn't been married yet, so that's a 21, by the way, and the 22. So the 22s going forward do have it.
That's
So the 20 is this the 21 is the current release?
Correct.
How long was it in those barrels?
About 8 months, 7 months.
So this was bottled like last summer.
I guess May. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Late May.
Wait a minute, how many barrels? You had one new oak barrel, right?
Yeah, and I actually take the new oak barrel for after I ferment in it, I age a different wine in it. I'm trying to spread out the new oak, because used barrels are about $25-$30. New barrels are about $1,000. So trying to spread the love.
Totally smart.
Keep the costs down. One day, I think I would like to buy a new oak barrel and age it in it, just sort of like up the oak impact a little bit. Especially the Cooper I buy is very transparent oak, so I'm. But at the same time, it's just trying to balance the fact that I think natural wine buyers are sort of unfamiliar with the new oak flavors, and so, I want this wine to taste expensive, but not.
But also really to like break what's driving that in the natural wine market isn't like necessarily the preference of the winemakers, but it's still this problem that people aren't paying the prices for natural wine that affords the winemakers to buy new barrels, right?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it for sure. And I think it's barrels have to come from somewhere, so I would rather know the provenance of the barrel from the beginning to hopefully 20 years from now when I kick it out.
Point. There's natural wine going into barrels that people buy on the market that were not natural wines that made in those barrels beforehand.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's,
I mean, that is what it is, but it's, if we're really like digging into the deep.
Yeah. And that's why I try not to get too pedantic about what is and isn't natural wine, because, I work in the cellar that is a shared cellar. And so not everyone is going without yeast. And even if they were, the 20 years of conventional winemaking that had been in that building beforehand, would have meant the microbiome leans towards sort of cultured yeast inherently. So, I know what I support, what businesses I buy from to that go into the wine. So, if I were to ever use a nutrient, I would buy an organic yeast nutrient, because those things have a carbon impact. And if I were to buy barrels, I would buy barrels from the people I know. And when I buy glass, I buy the lightest glass I can find, and domestically produced too. And because that's what's natural to me too, is keeping the carbon footprint down.
Right. Super important.
And is that a part of? I didn't realize, is that a part of basically quote unquote natural winemaking? Is that you're not using yeast? It's only native yeast.
Yeah, the way natural winemaking I would define it is kind of a spectrum, with on one hand being the 0-0, which is no additions, no removals. Mainly people are talking about sulfur in that realm, and then excuse me, one tick sort of to the other side of the spectrum from that is using sulfur, whether you're using sulfur at crush or sulfur at bottling. that there's that sort of a spectrum on its own. I tend to just use sulfur right at bottling if I can avoid it otherwise. And then sort of moving back along the spectrum, some sorts of filtration, maybe a coarse filtration is more natural than a sterile filtration. But really the thing that matters the most is that the vineyard source is organic.
What's the difference between coarse filtration and...
Basically the pore size of what the wine can fit. So when you filter, you're basically forcing wine through a media that has different pore sizes. So
like a sieve or a colander
exactly.
Or whatever,
and then as the holes in the sieve get smaller and smaller, microbes stop being able to fit through. So when I prepare a wine for sterile filtration at the winery, we have to step it down. So there'll be like a 0.8 micron would be the first pass, and then a 0.45 micron would be the second pass, and then the next pass is on the truck, which is a below that 0.3 or something like that. And that at that point, nothing can get through. No microbe can get through.
But then what else can't get through? Is there like tiny little solid particles, or is there tannins that aren't getting through?
There's some of that for sure. It's you lose a little bit in every filter pass. That's kind of why people make a big deal about being unfined, unfiltered.
Right.
I think.
What's the difference there? Unfined.
Fining would be something that you would add that would add to a wine that would strip out. So like something like bentonite, which is a charged clay. I think bentonite has strong negative charges, so it attracts things with a strong positive charge, and then they fall out to the bottom of the wine. Then you rack off over the top of that, and so that'd be a fining. A filtration is, like I just described, putting a wine through a small sieve.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, for some people too, that's like they even think of filtration as being aggressive, like on the wine, like anything, any step in the process, like.
Well, everything you do, I mean, every racking is going to have an effect. Every time you move a wine, it's going to have effect. Every time you filter a wine, I mean, the filtration we use is a cellulose material, so there's, we rinse it really good first, but there's still a little bit of paper flavor that comes through. And on a big lot of wine that might not matter at all. On a small lot of wine you might taste it more. But for me, what's really important too is that the wine is alive when I put it to bottle, and not alive in sort of the metaphorical sense that you talk about in a lot of conventional wine, which is an important and spiritual point. Like you taste the wine, like, oh, it's got life to it. That's a metaphorical version. What I'm talking about is it's alive. Like there's living microbes in there. They may be dormant, but they're in there. And you wouldn't have that if you sterile filtered or added, for example, Velcorin.
So how many people, like what percentage of commercial wines do that actually?
The vast majority.
Majority, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people will use a crossflow filter, which is very gentle. But basically the wines come out sterile at the other end.
Right.
You talk about gentle. How do you trash a wine doing that?
Well, you can do things more oxidatively. So maybe you don't use a neutral gas in the tank when you fill it. So like when I fill a tank, I'll fill it with neutral gas to push out the oxygen first. So you might, have a leaky hose or something, and then you can oxidize the wine that way. And I mean, there's a lot of ways you can trash a wine, but that's, you try not to generally. But I think trash is probably not the right word.
Just think about wine is not a homogeneous liquid. It's a very fragile suspension of different chemical compounds and acids and polyphenols and anthocyanins and all these things. And the more you move it around and mess with it, the more that fragile suspension is going to get damaged. And, this is my, I don't have any of the academic experience that somebody sitting to my right has. So I might say something crazy, but in my opinion, that's the origin of bottle shock, right? Is that you've taken something that's been, especially in a red wine, that's been, sitting in a barrel really gently and quietly and motionlessly for 18 months, and then you move it all around, you put it into a big tank, and then and then you smush it down into little bottles.
And you shoot it out of a hose.
You shoot it out of a hose and into a filler, and then it moves around, and the bottles all get shaken up, and and moving along the line, and then you put it on a truck and a forklift, and it's going to take time for that suspension, that solution to come back together in the bottle in its new vessel. And that's why when you get a bottle shipped to you and you lay it down if you don't have a cellar, in your closet or your wine fridge, whatever, for a few weeks, a few months, to let it kind of like come back to equilibrium. But if you do that too hard in the winemaking process, especially towards bottling and filtering, you're never going to get that suspension to come back together.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
How's that?
That's perfect.
Great. All right.
And
I just earned a degree. It's an associate's degree, but it's a degree.
It's a degree. And there is science to back all that up too. Wine will taste different because when you move it or bottle it, because it does take time to come back together. The chemistry will come back eventually, but it takes time.
Takes time. Patience and gentleness. The more you can be, and that's why there's like the premium on gravity flow wineries and all these things. And part of that's maybe just marketing, but the more gentle, the less pump runs and filters that it goes through, the better chance you have of that all coming back together in the bottle, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's pour the next.
Okay.
So now we got mixed whites.
Yeah. This is a white blend.
White blend.
It was meant to be a Chardonnay, but the Chardonnay fermentation did not agree with me. It is a risk that happens when you make natural wine is that it can stick. Basically, one of the reasons people add yeast is because you get more consistency. And so in that case, it has some of the 21 Fire Fuego blended in, just a touch to give it
Top and finish.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's the varietal here?
Chardonnay would be the main one.
Will you explain for people what stuck means for those people that don't make wine?
Yeah, so when you're fermenting wine, yeast are consuming sugar and some other nutrients and producing alcohol and CO2 as a byproduct. They can all sometimes other microbes can get in and or take over. And in this case, I think it was a malolactic fermentation took over and produces volatile acidity, or VA. And when VA gets to a certain point, then the wine is just then the yeast cannot perform their duty, and they can't eat sugar and make alcohol.
So then it gets to a point it just stops.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
exactly right.
you're like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
And so the wine would never really finish if
Exactly
you didn't
right.
do something.
Exactly right. And the VA might just keep going up and up and up. So this was a learning experience for me. White wines are harder to make naturally because a lot of the nutrients are in the skin. So this one was a white wine. I pressed it. I went to tank. It was slowing, and I needed the tank for another client. So I said, I'm just going to barrel it down. That worked last year. I think it'll do the same. It was basically the same vineyard source. And then I tasted the wine 3 weeks later, and it was awful. It was just high VA vinegar wine, and so and it was still sweet too. So even if I wanted to like blend it because they had the high VA, it would have still been sweet. So there's a risk of that fermenting in bottle again. And this is why people don't make natural wine, because this can happen. It does happen a lot.
Basically, when you have less tools
Yeah,
in your tool belt to fix things when you have problems, right?
exactly. And so this wine, I did something that I would say is not natural. Was I did a reverse osmosis filtration, which filters out can filter out VA, and then after that, the wine fermented on its own, dry and is tasty. But because I wanted it to be a natural wine, I blended back some 0.0 wine into it. So
is that how you restarted the fermentation?
the fermentation started up on its own
own.
because the filtration is actually smaller than the reverse osmosis doesn't take out yeast. It just takes out really small molecules, which are volatile acidity, ethanol, and water, and then it filters. I think if I have this right, that filtrate filters it again, so the VA goes somewhere, and then you can add the water and
the
and
ethanol
alcohol back.
Right.
So because this wine is from an organic vineyard site. It's I didn't add any yeast or other nutrients. I would call this like a 0-1, like it was one removal, which is VA. And this is kind of where you get into the nitty gritty of what is and isn't a natural wine. Because I blended in a wine that is verifiably natural into a wine that was 99% natural. And so like, where do you kind of land on that? And I think there's definitely people who would look at me and look at this wine and be like, not natty. And I think that's fine, but I'm trying to support the grower. I'm trying to make the wine. I'm trying to be here next year, afford to be here next year. And I think, it's still alive too. And it's so,
but no one was hurt in the
Yeah.
making of this wine. And so
Right.
for me, the thing is, I hate when people are like environmentalists or like they want wind power, but then you put up a bunch of propellers and then one bird flies into it one day and then they're like, oh my God, we need to get rid of those turbines because they killed a bird. Like you got to
send them down to Oakland. Let them smell the air by the refinery. Jack, would you get into a little bit more about the difference between natural wines and organic wines?
Yeah, sure. Organic wines are, they have to be certified by a certifying body that the viticulture was organic. And that means that, you're not spraying synthetic herbicides. You're not using treated wood for end post. And then you have to be careful about the sourcing of the seed for the cover crop. Generally has to be organic, if I have that right. But there is a whole list of non-synthetic pesticides you can spray. There's you can till all you want. You can water all you want. So that'd be kind of the difference. But I could buy those grapes and make them organic, and make them into natural wine if I wanted. And then for the winemaking, the winery has to be certified organic. So that's like a certification process that I would have to go through at the winery. And then all the materials that I add would have to be certified organic. But again, you could add basically, there's like an organic equivalent to almost everything that you would add that is not organic. It costs more and is certified. And, probably is ultimately better for the environment. But you can filter, you can do all the sort of things that you do in conventional wine. Excuse me. But
things out for you.
And
you
then
do
natural.
And then natural would be from an organic grape source, not necessarily certified, fermented without added yeast or nutrients, and then unfiltered, and then unfined, and perhaps a little bit of sulfur at bottling. The sort of there's no like hard fast rules for natural, which is kind of why it's bullshit. At the same time, it's also why it's part of the sort of anarchist response to sort of the conventional wine scene.
I mean, my biggest qualm with that, and I'll, we're friends, so I'm going to call you out, Jack, is that I believe wholeheartedly in the importance of certification. Mm-hmm. Whether it's regenerative organic certification or one of the several certifying bodies in organic, just because there is then, accountability. And I'm not going to like disparage many of the fine growers that you and I both buy from, but that aren't using, paying for and going through the expensive process of certification. But in general, when you don't know the farmer and you don't know the winemaker and they say, oh, we use source organically farmed but not certified vineyards, that for me is always a red flag that, there could be things going on there. And farmers that, protect their crop by using a tool to fix a problem that isn't an organic tool, but because they're not certified, they can get away with it and keep saying that they're farming quote unquote organically, right?
But not,
so
not
it is
necessarily nefarious.
No, not necessarily nefarious. It's just the reality of, especially on the farming side, if you have a problem and the most cost effective way of solving that problem is a synthetic fix, and it's the difference between having a profitable year or having to sell the property.
That's right.
That's like that line is that narrow, that margin is that narrow. So if you have to do something, then you have to do it. are you then gonna like sell it to a quote unquote natural winemaker, and they're gonna tell their customers and their distributors? You know, maybe there is that risk there. So it's a case where, you know, again, small winemaker, you know, small winery, small farmer, know your winemaker, and you can trust it. But the biggest red flag and bullshit I see in the natural wine world on the larger scale is going, oh, well, it doesn't have to be certified. Well, yeah, if you want to be able to get away with things that make it so it's not certifiable, then yeah, it doesn't have to be certified.
Starting at the base of the process, you're using something that's not organic. Right.
No, I think certification is the future. One of the reasons I really wanted to work with the Bedrock vineyard is because they are moving towards organic certification. But you know, and then the other thing I do is I put the farmer's name on the back of the label, which, you know, has some farmers like that. The ones I buy from tend to.
I would think so.
Yeah, some of them don't really care. But
Ross could give a fuck.
Yeah, and David too. But that's part of the charm. Is getting to mess with them.
Right. And you know, and on the flip side, there is the piece of that, you know, someone like David who's starting a, you know, vineyard management business and leasing vineyards and you know, is basically a one-man operation. The cost of certification and the cost of the paperwork and the time and the energy that it takes to do that is prohibitive. So, you know, I see both sides.
And it doesn't come back. The price doesn't come back. So, you know, if I could say organic, I would have to pay, you know, it would cost me another, you know, $2 or $3 a bottle, but maybe not that much. Maybe not that much, but maybe another, you know.
Depends on the volume. Right?
Yeah. And then but I probably wouldn't be able to sell it for more than I can already in general.
And where's the Chardonnay from?
Sonoma Mountain. So really on the top of Silver Vista.
Just down the road from Dos Limones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Up the road, up the mountain.
He's
higher. He's behind above Lake Josephine.
Okay. It's not that vineyard there along the side
Lake
of the road.
Josephine. See, now there's a reference we've never heard on this podcast before.
I don't know who Josephine was, but it's like kind of, you know, there's not a. I should know this.
Yeah.
Phil would know this.
And anyone
it's a reservoir. It's a man-made.
Yeah.
In all the lakes in Sonoma are, but.
But there's if you ever go on Google Earth, because Paul did this to me one day, where he just sat down and we looked on Sonoma Mountain and looked at all these cool properties that have. You have no idea unless you're actually up there.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on up there?
Yeah, you can't see none of these things you can see from the valley.
No.
Yeah. I just heard the story about Dos Limones. You know, the whole story about how it was really created. They left the two trees.
These two lemon.
Yeah.
So I think he put it on social media. I got to get it from Ross. So Ross Kennard, who we're going to taste the Primitivo next. So this is a good segue. Essentially was born in a house overlooking that property. The vineyard, I think he was born in 82, so there was vineyard then, but in the interim when his parents lived there before he was born was when the citrus grove died and froze to death.
72.
72?
Yep.
And then so there's a photo that he has from his house down to this vineyard block where there's the two lemon trees that survived the freeze that are still there, and then where the vineyard was planted around them. So I got to get that photo. I'll put it out on social media somewhere by the time this airs. Cool. Yeah. So
let's try the Primitivo then.
Primitivo. It's the same Primitivo that goes into a nice canned rosé product that I've heard of before.
Oh, really?
Oh, look at the color on this. This is going to go.
Does 16600 do canned products?
Just like Bart does Chenin Blanc.
Absolutely. But have you been in Oprah's magazine?
I have not been in Oprah's magazine.
Oh, man.
Get no love from the Fairmont Psalms, I guess.
What's weird? You know what's weird is to see red wine poured out of a clear bottle.
Yeah, right. That was a conscious choice in the beginning because I just, wanted to convey transparency.
Yeah.
And stick out a bit. I'm actually going to put this one in a dark bottle going forward in a natural cork because it's just so damn good and needs to and can age. So
the only other
go ahead
place I know that makes Primitivo is Joey Benziger.
Well, I mean, a lot of people are probably just calling it Zinfandel, or they're calling it Primitivo because they don't want to sell Zinfandel. But the vineyard was originally planted, I believe, by a member of the Cundy family.
That's what I hear too.
And it was probably going into some Cundy winery product in the 90s.
You gotta be careful with that word.
Some cuvee.
Kundi with a D. Get me in
Hey,
trouble.
they own a beautiful mountain.
And so whoever planted it made the sort of wild card decision to direct plant it.
Yeah,
so no grafting.
unrooted.
Yeah, which is for those who don't know, most vines are grafted onto rootstock that is of American origin, so it can survive phylloxera. This one is on its own roots, most of the vineyard, and dry farmed as well, which I think sort of explains how it can survive.
You think that the not getting watered is why it doesn't feed the phylloxera?
Yeah, phylloxera can really only survive in the first 6 or so inches of soil, as I understand it, and dry farming forces grapes to grow deeper.
Huh.
And so that I think ties into it. We started out no-tilling, or Ross started out no-tilling this site.
I fucked that all up.
Yeah, well, the yields dropped precipitously in dry years.
You know, there's a lot of love thrown no-till's way, and there's a lot of love thrown dry farming's way. Combining those two things is difficult.
Yep.
You know, dry farming thrives when you can till the soil and break it up and help the moisture get down there a little. I don't know exactly the science of why tilling and dry farming go well together, but it's tough to dry farm and no-till.
Yeah, the reason my uncle dry farms, I think, for the most part, is you create this what's called a dust mulch.
Right.
So you basically break the whatever would be drawing up the soil moisture. You sort of create a cap on that.
All right.
And in so doing, you're also eliminating the other weeds or plants that would be growing underneath
And sucking up the water.
Exactly.
Right.
So own rooted Primitivo that's dry farmed. Sort of all ties into what
year is this, Jack?
This is a 2021.
This was just bought. When was this bottled?
In May, along with the Fume. And we had really low yields in 2021. So it's more concentrated. And I switched to aging in puncheon, so sort of a slower and deeper wine. I think slower to age.
That's a great version of this variety. It's fucking great. The density, the freshness, the combination of those two things, which I love.
Cheers.
Yeah. Great color.
I know people always ask me if I got it really hot or something. It always just has color on its own. And the fermentation is actually pretty cool and relatively slow.
Well, and that's one of the sort of distinctions between Primitivo and Zinfandel are genetically the same thing, right? But Zinfandel has, and especially from vineyards not like this one, has bigger clusters, maybe more variability in the color of each individual bunch. This vineyard has these tiny little hand grenade versions of Zinfandel, of Primitivo clusters. And I don't know a ton about Primitivo and other sites, so I can't speak to those ones, but you go out there and it doesn't look or taste like Zinfandel in the vineyard. And this does, this has similarities to what I would, think of Zinfandel, but, the tension, the texture is definitely, the acidity is definitely, another version of it.
There's savory herbs in this too, which is so fucking great.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. As a sommelier, what am I tasting different? Why do I love this? I love the Fuego. I love the Sauv Blanc, the Chard. It's all good, but this hits my palate more. I'm getting more flavors out of it. What is it that's doing that?
I'm going to let Jack speak to that. I mean,
okay.
For someone who drinks traditional wine most of the time, I can see the attraction to wines with, and we'll use that word again, tension. It's something about freshness. But I also like drinking when grapes come in and you taste them when they're first pressed, before they've even gone through fermentation. I like drinking that too. So if you just love the taste of grapes, you're getting it sort of in a different iteration here. You're not getting it where it's extended aging, whether it be oak. There's just this freshness at this.
It's almost like you named the winery after it.
Oh, might have been.
There is.
That was the first wine I made. Was this one in 19? This and a rosé from the same site. The the sort of protocol for me is to work the cap real hard when it's has not started fermenting. Trying to
pre-fermentation maceration.
Yeah, aqueous. So the wine doesn't have the mixture is not alcoholic. Right. So the extraction is to me more friendly. And then I actually press it before dryness. So I'm trying to limit extraction.
Like how far before dryness?
5 bricks, so about 3/4 of the way through.
Right.
So is it just the skin contact that I'm tasting that's so different?
I mean that the concept of like the pre-fermentation extraction is super important, and that's the basis of like the Audoutet wines are really about that that cold soak and that aqueous non-alcoholic extraction. You get all this flavor and all this density without the roughness, without the same like tannic extraction. And I think that's kind of what's happening there.
Okay.
And definitely you get all that good skin flavor.
I'm in love with this, man.
Yeah,
cool. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think
John went from in this episode drinking wine that he bought at Rite Aid to drinking natural wine
and
full circle
going through Bordeaux. But almost like different. You're on a different flavor scale sometimes with some of these wines where it's just that it's a little higher toned, but almost like yogurt. Yogurt, you can get commercial yogurt. You can get the yogurt that goes all the way from typical yogurt to stuff that is using goat's milk or stuff that tastes like almost like cheesecake. Like, and that goes through a fermentation process too. There's like fresh yogurt, and then there's stuff that's aged for a while.
Are you making the yogurt in the cork basket yet?
My mom and I are on we have a plan.
You're on a hunt? Okay.
Got a plan, baby.
We got a plan. Yeah.
When will we see some? Come on.
It's not going to travel. It'll explode in the car between here and Roanoke Park.
Next couple months, I would assume. My mom just got back from Hawaii, so she's...
oh, sorry about that. Man. Where was she? What island?
Maui.
Everybody's over there right now. It's just silly.
Everybody but us.
Yeah. On the other hand, I used to go there a lot. Diving. That was fun. Uh-oh. We got a new wine.
There's one more wine.
Okay.
To close this out and to talk about...
And Jack, just talking about do you recommend with the red serving it at this temperature?
Yeah, it's a little chill, yeah.
Yeah, and I love it like
that's
this.
That's kind of... yeah, that's the idea. And when I started making the wine, chillable reds were really in. So I tried to make it that was kind of the style I was going for. I would say you could serve it cellar temp or a little below, but I'm not like a white wine. I wanted to make wine that was like party wine, and then this vineyard just keeps telling me it's a serious site. So
oh yeah, you hit the nail, man.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
I think, John, if you did a tasting where everything was same temp and you had two conventionally or whatever made wines and then this wine next, you'd have a different experience than you're having right now.
Okay.
If you tasted them in succession.
Right. It would...
And not that you wouldn't think it was good, but you would be like, oh, this wine is really different from those other two wines. But right now you're just enjoying it as a fucking great wine that someone across from you made.
It's like a red rosé to me. It's beautiful.
Love it.
Like it.
Okay, so one more wine here on the list, guys. You won't believe it. It's mostly Chardonnay.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's red.
It doesn't
color.
look like Chardonnay.
So, I was talking earlier about this fermentation that went awry, and that was a Chardonnay. I had, I was freaking out. How do you fix a wine when you don't want to have, when you're trying to make natural wine, and how do you fix it? And the conventional thing to do is what I did with the Chardonnay, which is to reverse osmosis filter it, remove EA. And then blend it back. And that wine is great. I'm happy with that wine. But I also wanted to, other people are saying, and Isabelle Gassier being one of them, and other people on the natural wine side are saying, just put it over some skins. So this is actually Chardonnay that was stuck, and I pumped it over the Primitivo skins. So Chardonnay...
After you press it off.
Yeah,
and notably, you press it off not dry. So there's still some fermentation that can happen in there.
Yeah, exactly right. And I actually didn't even press it. I just drained and had the skins still in the tank. And
why the interesting closure? It's just a bottle cap.
Yeah, because it's a pet nat. So it's
Oh, okay. There you go.
sparkling wine. So this is what is called a brutal, which is a
Not brutal. Brutal.
brutal. It comes from this sort of Spanish tradition or a collective of winemakers who all were kind of making experimental wine on the natural, and they were just calling it brutal. So it's kind of what is interestingly an open source label. So anyone can make a brutal as long as you follow the rules, which are that it has to be 0.0. It has to be, I think, under 50 cases, and it has to be an experiment, sort of a one-off. That's how I interpret it.
Yes, I'm actually stoked to. This is the first time we've talked about the brutal concept on the show, and I'm happy to have Jack here who gets it more than I do. But to have the chance, it is a cool thing, and you'll see a version of this label on wines that come from all over the world. It came out of Spain, and some really, talk about anarchist winemakers, to the definition of that.
And look at
Uncle Tony's made a brutal in the past. Anybody who, and again, it could be something that you're not necessarily known as a natural brand, but you do something that fits the criteria that Jack just laid out. The 0.0, the experimental.
I swear
the
that there
small
is
production.
some larger producers that have done brutal.
It wouldn't surprise me. I think the
I think
rules
even
are-
like Rotor or
that would surprise me, but I would be maybe it's I don't know. That'd be cool.
I mean, if there was a winemaker in that, if they did something in that cellar that was experimental and sort of one-off,
like zero dosage, like
they
there was something.
they could do something.
Yeah.
It's.
I think I bought some of these wines before, actually.
Cool.
I mean,
But
imagine that they would show up if somebody in Sonoma County was doing something like that from a larger house. They would probably, once it maxed out, who on their list would buy it, that they would, clear them with, in places that you would be buying wine in Sonoma County, whether that's Oliver's or Bottle Barn or, grocery outlet. That could definitely be a place that these would get, cleared.
So a little more about the wine. So the Chardonnay was stuck, had high VA, had sugar. I wanted to fix it, and so it had put it over the Primitivo skins, and the skins had a really high, healthy yeast population, and some nutrients that probably were left in the skins, and the wine went dry. I was shocked, and something I learned that year too is that yeast can actually consume VA. Volatile acidity was dropped.
Well, so that wasn't known to you, and that didn't seem like something that was possible. That yeast would consume VA.
I think I maybe I'd heard it, but I don't know. It never sort of had been relevant before. Usually the VAs are kept in check, and in this case, the VA was already high, and the yeast did their work, and the wine went dry, and then it was dry. And I felt like I needed sort of a little oomph, and there's nothing wrong. I mean, everyone likes sparkling wine. So I actually added back some apple juice, 5% of
That's what
cider.
I'm tasting.
Yeah. And then bottled it as a pet nat, which is a wine that'll be fizzy.
Now, this is the only one with anything on the bottom. It's got a little yeast.
Yeah,
there's.
there's if you look closely, these wines do all have a little bit of sediment.
They all do.
But this one has the most, because what I learned is that apple juices throw a lot of sediment. Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't disgorge this wine, so it's definitely kind of gooey.
And it's got a little funk to it too.
And it's got some. I mean, the VA is not all gone. There's plenty of VA there, but it's in check.
And I think the appleness also sort of sort of lends that, as that same kind of expression.
Right now, I'm just imagining having the cider from Tony and Mike the Baker, and getting some of those same flavors.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That kind of that finish where it's not like unpleasant bitterness, but there's a little bitter of like an
bruised apple.
It's
yeah.
So, this is not a wine I could ever make again, I don't think. But
hopefully you never have to.
Hopefully I never have to.
Yeah.
But people like sparkling red. I think that's a fun category of wine to make.
But it's fun as hell.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
exactly.
And at 50 cases, it's enough of a.
And you even put on their experimental series.
Yeah, so maybe there'll be another one to follow. Who knows? It'll be different though.
I like the concept of experimental.
Yeah, it's just fun to make wine without the rules.
Well, it's anti-constellation is what it is.
Well, I would definitely consider myself to be that.
Other than, when we had several bottles of 19 Crimes, so is this podcast.
Well, John, it's nice when you actually someone who knows what they're doing can experiment and know what to do if things go absolutely wrong.
I mean, if the Jack Sporer sort of career history that we went through teaches you anything, it's know the rules
You've seen
to
it.
break the rules. Right?
Yeah, it's definitely my philosophy. I made a lot of wine differently than this in my career, and
No.
I still do, and I still learn every vintage. But
Well, you should be really
Yeah, we
proud.
should actually
Really
give
proud.
Jack credit on things that a lot of our listeners love, which is the Aducat project. He's instrumental and pivotal in helping execute both the protocols that we inherited from Philippe Combi and how Isabel tweaks them every year to keep us on our toes. And now at least she types them up instead of writes them out in that French Catholic school longhand. That was impossible for us California public school kids to frickin' read.
oh my god,
We didn't learn cursive in California, John.
And I get the feeling from Isabel that she kind of leans in a little bit to natural wine here in California and is kind of intrigued by some of the wines that people like Martha Stoneman are making, and she kind of is excited by something.
I
like
don't know
that.
if we're like breaking news that we shouldn't break, but she's got is it a 0-0 something that's in the natty wine category that she's now making under the Gassier umbrella back home. She's like certainly somebody who's as classically trained as they come, who came to California and absorbed a little of our natty Kool-Aid.
and her dad, to his credit, is been trending towards a natural winemaker for a long time. I don't think he would identify himself that way, but sort of just more and more hands off as he has more and more knowledge about what the wine's going to do and how to make it and what he doesn't need to actually add. And then they're already organic, so they're kind of well set up for that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a lesson in all of this, for me, it's that if it is in the vineyard and the farming is right and you trust the fruit, you can take the lessons and the ethos of natural wine and put it into any category, and it's going to make the wine better. You can still rely on some of the technology and tools that are maybe looked down upon or shunned from the natural wine community, but take the sort of general lesson and apply it to all of us making better wine, no matter what your sort of dogmatic or not dogmatic beliefs are.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of room for there's a lot to be learned from natural wine, even if you don't think that you want to make an orange wine. Is limiting sulfur does make a better wine. I think if you bottle with 150 parts total, it's you're going to taste that. And if you add a whole bunch of acid to a wine, then and the pH is not something that would ever be found in nature with that sort of ripeness, it's like you're gonna that shows through, and sort of the savvy consumer can kind of taste that, I think.
Even if they're not necessarily knowing why it's offending their palates.
Exactly.
That's why it's
Exactly right.
But if you showed up to a party with 2 bottles of every one of these wines that we had today, everyone would be happy and having a good time.
And definitely, sort of my aesthetic is to make natural wine for normal people. You don't have to be a real natty wine fiend to like the Fresco lineup, and what I really want to be is a bridge to the consumer. So people who don't think natural wine is that good, try my wine, and then maybe I might change your mind a bit.
I like the tagline. Natural wine for normal people.
Yeah. That should be a t-shirt.
Yeah. Well, not being a normal person, it's kind of hard to
Right.
claim that.
Yeah, and that's not your fault, Jack. There's several generations of buckling that have led to that.
Yeah, and your labels only have 2 colors, which if you are the bridge between conventional and natural, because if you were in the natural wine movement, your labels would be almost cartoonish.
Yep, in
And-
general.
and
Yeah, or
have-
maybe like a kid's drawing. Yeah, maybe that's all Thea have any drawings I can put on.
We haven't gotten there yet. Her art's coming along.
Well, cool.
Yeah, we'll get you there.
Oh man.
Jack, pull something off the fridge one day and just use it as your label. Tell Sam.
We'll set her up with a little art station in the winery one day when we're in there tasting
Perfect.
and see what she comes up with.
Oh man.
She tastes all the
Althea's
wine
blend.
too. Althea's blend.
Ooh, it's already sold.
Totally.
Yeah.
Start selling futures now.
Got college to pay for. Got preschool to pay for. Fuck.
Oh man.
Right. Well, tell us, Jack, where we can get your wines, man. Follow. You're a great follow, Vino Graffito, but there's also a
Yeah, Fresco. Fresh.co.wine is my Instagram handle.
And that's FRES.
Yeah,
.co.
FRES.co. And I wish I had that URL, but it's taken. So fresh.wine, www.fresh.wine is the best way to buy from me. I'm available locally here in Sonoma, in SF and LA, also in New York, and around Ohio, oddly, as well.
Huh.
shout out Ohio.
Shout out Voyager Beverage.
All right.
But the best thing is to get in contact via my website. And I do
Fresh
apologize for the state of the website. We're getting a new one. It's going to be way better.
You know where Joel does seemingly very, very well is St. Louis for some reason.
Yeah, it's a great wine market.
Yeah.
And there's places that aren't the Tony Urbain major markets of the New York, the LA. There's people who like to drink good wine in those places, and they like it when you go there and give them love because they're sick of seeing on Instagram another winemaker walking around and drinking fancy wine in New York. Not that we don't love to do that, but going to those places and
It's been done.
it's
Well, Joel seems like he's there all the time doing these huge Zen dinners.
well, he must have a good rep there too.
He's a freaking legend.
Yeah.
I
You
understand.
go anywhere he wants.
Yeah, totally.
So's Jack.
Jack, how much do you make of each one of these wines?
100 to 150 cases of everything. The Fire Fuego is a bit bigger production, more like 250
Okay.
cases.
And is there anything we didn't taste today?
Oh, there's several, yeah. I
Like-
make a rosé that's really, really banging.
From
the Primitivo. So trying to sort of, take the old California concepts and turn them back on their head. So White Zen, Fumé Blanc.
I love the Fumé Blanc
Yeah.
concept too.
Exactly.
Now, you also brought some very large test tubes.
That's some of the wine that Sam and I make together.
That's work.
you
Yeah.
also
That's
have
work.
some
That's-
very large testes. I thought we were going in a different direction there, John.
That's why he walks. That's why he walks funny.
Big cojones. No, it's just I see him over there, and it's like I saw you guys chasing him. So
That's the 2021 Zin.
Rossi Ranch.
Yeah, Rossi Ranch. Tasting bang.
Tasting those. There's 5 test tubes, and we're gonna make that's each represent one of the barrels, and we only want to make 100 cases, so we're deciding which barrel gets
Yeah.
the axe.
is this Sonoma County Zen?
This is Rossi Ranch.
Okay,
Ranch.
all
Rossi
right,
Ranch.
all right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's how I feel. Most of my time is on the wines that Sam makes.
His
and
most important clients.
Uncle Will makes. We have about 20 different clients over there at Magnolia, all making wine together. Some natural, some not. A lot of people are sort of somewhere on the spectrum though, between organic growing and low intervention winemaking.
Yeah, it's a great wine community that you're fomenting there.
Totally.
It's fun to be work with my friends and make cool wine and
Yeah, but you're doing a good job of it.
Make delicious wine.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, that's kind of what counts for me. Is
Well, thanks for being such a great guest today.
Love being here,
Interesting
guys.
conversation. So, Brian,
Bart was gonna text me shout outs, but he didn't. So
well, and
he's clearly busy.
we only have one anyway because
April Fool's Day.
The only thing that matters.
Speaking of Rossi Ranch, right?
Right.
We're having how do you want to
Comprehensive.
a comprehensive
a
tasting
seminar.
of Rossi Ranch by a number of different winemakers, a
12
number
different
of
wineries.
different wineries.
Rosemary Cake Bread, Tony Biaggi, Frederick Johansson, Mayan Chachki,
Artie
Danielle
Johnson,
Langlois, Artie Johnson,
Bart Hansen.
Alejandro Zaman, and now featuring yours truly and our good friend MJ Towler as
You
the
come up-
moderator.
Excellent.
Because we were going to have Elaine chucking Hawk Waka Waka Brown. She, the last minute, couldn't do it. So to replace Elaine, you need at least 2 people.
For sure.
So it'll be me, MJ, and friend of Winery 16600 and star of film and screen, Jamie Kaler.
There you go.
So,
He sure does a good job of hosting, doesn't he?
it's going to be, look, it's going to be a very serious tasting of these wines,
Yeah.
but it's not going to be critical breakdown. It's not going to be super technical. What we want to do is celebrate this amazing place, Rossi Ranch. And we want to celebrate the importance of farming the way that we do, organic, regenerative, high intensity farming. And it's going to show through these 12 wines. It's mostly going to be Grenache, and we're going to see same Grenache from the same vineyard interpreted in different ways with different styles.
Totally.
And we're going to see
Should be
the
a
through
lot of
lines
fun.
of what the terroir is and what the farming brings. So.
Oh, and by the way, you're going to have lunch.
And the lunch is going to be, the Chef Jared Reeves at the Fairmont and a whole bunch of rosé from different places, all farmed by Enterprise.
Free flowing rosé at
Yeah.
lunch. Yep.
And I just got an order for posters for you. While we were doing
good.
while we were doing the
I thought we were
podcast.
taking those to Staples, but I'd rather keep it local. So you'll see those around town soon.
Well, John, you better get out of here.
Get printing.
working
we need
on
those,
those
we need
posters.
those last week.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's always rush, isn't it? It's all
right.
good. I can start this afternoon, man. No problem. Anything else from you, Brian?
No, that's it.
All right.
We want to make sure that people come and
Yeah.
check out this tasting.
Check out
'cause it's,
Eventbrite.
I mean, it's going to be epic, and it's a little preview of probably what's going to be going on next year
Right.
at HDR. So, and I think we should be doing more of this stuff in Sonoma.
HDR.
Hospice du Rhône.
Hospice du
Oh,
Rhône.
thank you.
Yeah. We live in wine country,
Duh.
and it's puzzling to me that we don't do more wine events around here throughout the year. Like this is
Like, and educationally focused, but
Right.
celebratory.
right. And we take wine seriously, and we don't take life as seriously. So that'll be
That's
exactly how we're going to do this event. It's going to be, I mean, come learn about Rossi Ranch. This is going to be an epic tasting with an incredible lineup of people, but we're going to have a good time.
and let's just sweeten the deal, because this is coming out next week, so I can talk about it. Hopefully we've sold, keep selling the tickets. If you want to come and make a weekend of it, we're going to have an old school vinyl Sunday at the Tasting House the day after. So it's April 1st,
Right.
April Fool's Day at the Fairmont, and then make a weekend, come hang out, eat some tacos, listen to some bluegrass, and have a good old time
Who's
at
playing?
the Tasting House. It's some buddies of mine, banjo, guitar duo, bluegrass duo.
And the
I don't know if
best
they perform
tacos in Sonoma.
perform a ton, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be fun and great tacos.
Yeah.
And Vinyl Sunday, the way it should be.
Absolutely.
At the Tasting House.
That's really become a big brand, actually. Vinyl
It's
Sunday.
took on a life of its own,
Yeah.
especially with the Denmark Vineyard Denmark barn shows. So we're keeping
Mike
it a
the
little
Baker
simple.
going to be here, or
I
who's
don't.
doing the
We're not gonna. We're doing tacos.
We're doing tacos.
Veggie tacos.
Best tacos.
And some.
We eat these tacos every Friday.
every Friday.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're very familiar
Always.
with
Why
the
not?
tacos.
Why not?
We have done extensive experimentation with the taco
Lot of research.
situation
A lot of
in
research.
Sonoma. Oh,
We're
yeah.
serious people.
These
Jack.
are the best tacos
Well,
in
you know,
Sonoma.
you talk about serious and having fun both.
Yeah.
The gravitas comes from the winemakers.
right.
The wine and the interaction, that's what's fun.
Yeah. So
It's
Yep.
perfect.
Totally.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening, and thank you, Jack, for being on.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
thank you,
Nice
Jack.
job,
This
Jack.
is-
Much
Love
appreciated.
being here, guys.
Jack, you can come back every week.
Hell yeah.
All right. We'll talk to you every Friday.
subscribe,
Yeah,
review, tell your friends,
absolutely.
only if they're cool.
That's perfect, Sam. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye.